What's up, y'all, and welcome to the install and review video of the Club Alfa lightweight two-piece rotors for the 2.0 Alfa Romeo Giulia and Stelvio. So behind me, I have my 2018 Alfa Romeo Giulia Q4 Ti Sport, or Veloce, that has the OEM one-piece brake rotors on here. And today, we will be installing the kit that we sell at Club Alfa of these two-piece lightweight brake rotors for the 2.0 Giulia and Stelvio. So let's go ahead and get into, before we install, everything that we have to do to make sure that the car is ready to throw on this, this awesome brakes. Okay, so first things first, folks, you want to make sure that you have everything in your kit that you're supposed to have. If you went ahead and bought the entire set for the entire car, you should have two front rotors and you should have two rear rotors, as well as a set of front brake pads and rear brake pads. You want to make sure that you have that two of your rear brake pads have brake sensor wires that are fully intact and connected, and same with the fronts. You need to make sure that you have two front brake rotors that have the brake sensor wire fully intact and connected. Okay, once that's done, you also need to inspect that you have two front rotors and two rear. The fronts are 330 millimeters in diameter and the rear are 320 millimeters in diameter. And you know it's the front, obviously, because it's bigger, but also it says front right there. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that, if that comes in clear. Now, these rotors are directional, which means they have to go on a certain side of the car, and they make it easy for you because they put which side it needs to go on. So this is L for left side, so this would be the driver's side. And there's a rotor here that says R for right side. And so you do the exact same thing with the rear. It says rear right here. Okay, hopefully you guys can see that. It says rear, and it also says right there with the direction, and this one says left. So before you start anything, make sure that you have the correct components. Also, I picked up some .4 brake fluid. This is not high performance fluid, but it is Brembo .4. It's the spec that our cars take. By all means, if you're going to be doing track day stuff, you know, get something a little bit hardier, right? ATE, Castrol, SRF. There's a couple of other brands that make more heat resistant brake fluid, but for the street, this is more than what's necessary. It's perfectly fine. And I also have a Motive power bleeder right here. Some of you guys who do work on your own brakes have probably seen this, probably own this. This is amazing. This allows me to bleed the brakes without the help of a buddy. Also make sure that you have the Euro spec cap, right, for the brake reservoir. So, okay, that should just about get us set for everything that we have to do. Disconnect the brake wear sensor right here. That's really easy. And then you're going to take a T55 Torx bit to remove these two bolts here holding the caliper on. Before those are removed all the way, I just take a crosshead screwdriver and a hammer or a mallet, and I tap out the slide pins right here. That bolt comes off. Okay, set that down. You can slide these pins out by hand. You can just re-lube these and reuse them. It's not that big of a deal. As well as the spring in here, it's not that big of a deal. All you have to do is wiggle off the caliper. All right. Now remember, this is affixed to the car with a hard brake line. It's not a soft brake line, it's a hard brake line. So don't go and yank this because you don't want to weaken the attachment point or snap the brake line. So you're just going to gently remove it from the caliper, from the rotor. As you can see, the old brake pads just kind of come out real easy. You will have to unhook the wear sensor from the little metal prong in there. And then the brake pad just comes out. Okay folks, so what I did was I used a wire hanger to hang the caliper up to the upper control arm here. Let me show you that right there. You can see there's that wire. You can just take an old metal clothes hanger, undo it and use that. It's really simple if you don't have, something else dedicated. So the next piece to getting the brake rotor off is to take out this set screw right here. This takes a 5mm Allen wrench key, and you just unscrew it real simple, and you'll see the brake rotor come loose. As soon as that's done, now the old brake rotor is off. Okay folks, so before we continue, I just wanted to compare the Club Alfa 2-piece lightweight rotor to the OEM style rotor that I have here. Now this was actually not an OEM rotor, this was a rotor from Brake Kinetics. I did a review of this rotor a little bit over a year ago, I think now, maybe a year and a half ago, and don't get me wrong, these were great rotors. Go check out the review if you want something from Brake Kinetic. But as you can see over time, not only has the coating that was on here, the rust-proof coating, not only has that completely gone away, but also so has it on the center hat. Granted, I've been pretty tough on these rotors. They've seen several spirited drive road trips. I've had to remove these rotors a couple times due to just repairs on the car and taking the wheels off and on, swapping tires and stuff like that. However, so the heat paint here is still intact for the most part, but you can see around here that is completely gone, and obviously on the rotor face that's gone as well. Not a bad rotor at all. However, this Brake Kinetic kit I think cost me $700 to $800. For a little bit more, you get something that'll last a lot longer. Obviously, there's no paint to fade on this. This is anodized aluminum, and yeah. Oh, and also these brake rotors are noticeably lighter. So the new lightweight 2-piece brake rotor is noticeably lighter than the old one. Okay, so 18.8 pounds, and I think this is closer to 20 pounds. So saving some weight there, some performance, but also it's going to look better longer. And I mean, just you can just kind of compare that, right? Looks really good. Okay, y'all, so we have the brake rotor off now. Next thing we want to do is we want to compress both sides of the brake caliper pistons. There's 2 pistons here, 2 pistons there. We want to compress those all the way back into the caliper so that we can fit the new full thick brake pads in there properly. If you don't compress them, they won't fit back on the new brake rotor. And that's part of the reason why in the beginning we opened up the brake reservoir in the engine bay. So when we compress this, the fluid has to go somewhere, and it can go there easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the old brake pads, see how thin that is. It's super worn down, but the good news is it's worn evenly, which means that the brake caliper is in good condition. So we're going to take the brake pad and you're just going to put it almost back as if you're reinstalling it into the car, and then you take a C-clamp and you're just going to essentially squeeze it, and you'll see the piston start to retract. I did one side. To do the other side, it's a little tricky to get this lined up just right. So what you should do is, if you're using the C-clamp method, just come in from the back of the caliper like that. And obviously you have your brake pad, your old brake pad right there, and then clamp it down. But now, as you guys can see, everything is fully retracted on this side and on that side. You want it to be fully retracted in order to put the new stuff on. Now, one last tip. Before you install the new stuff, it's always good practice to take some brake cleaner and a wire brush just to clean up the stuff, because over time, you know, this hub, as well as the spacer, if you're using a spacer, over time the hub and the spacer can become, you know, gunked up with dirt, road grime, and rust, and make it hard for installation and stuff like that. So it's never a bad idea to take a wire brush or a wire tool, a wire wheel, and clean that up. But so let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll start the reinstall process. Also do the same thing with your lug nuts as well. As you can see, mine are rusted over pretty thoroughly there. So I'm going to take a wire brush, knock some of that down, and then I will be reinstalling everything with copper paste, anti-seize. Same with these. I'll be reusing these bolts and putting a bit of anti-seize on there. So it's just good practice for the future, and to keep your stuff working smoothly and properly. Okay, so once you have everything set and ready to go, you're going to hang the brake, the new brake rotor, put the set screw in, and then you're going to mount the new brake pads into the brake caliper, and you're going to then put the brake caliper on the rotor, put the slide pins in, and then lastly bolt the brake caliper to the hub. So essentially the reverse order of everything we just did, and then you'll be done with one of the front brake rotors. And now the caliper is on there, and the wheel is ready to go back on if this had been bled. But we're going to leave it like this because we need to do all four corners of the car, and then the last step is to bleed the brakes, and then you're good to go. So this is what the finished product should look like. Lightweight two-piece rotor with the caliper attached. That's what it should look like. You know, make sure everything's on there properly, and then we can move to the rear to show you how to do the rear brake. All right, y'all, so for this piece, we are going to attack the rear. So pretty simple, but still a couple of steps you got to follow. You're going to just pop off this, the spring here that holds the caliper together with a flathead screwdriver. All right. Then make sure that you have a 7mm hex key for the caliper bolts, which are back here, one on top and one on bottom. Let me show you guys that. There's one on top and there's one on bottom here. And then also make sure that you disconnect the brake wear sensor. As you can see, my wire was actually ground in half by the wheel, so probably going to mount that a different way. I'll put a piece of tape to keep that in place. That's not a big deal, just something to think about. And then there's the wire over here. This is to the actual e-brake and the parking brake. You're going to need to take a small flathead or a pick to disconnect that, and that'll allow you to move this piece of the caliper out of the way, to unbolt this second piece, and then to unbolt the rotor. So let's go ahead and do all that. All right, y'all, so now that the caliper is apart, once again, we're going to hang the caliper so that it's not hanging by the brake line. You know, I just used the same wire hanger and hung it to where it's suspended on its own. That's going to help us push this piston back in. And but we also have to take off this other piece of the caliper. So as you can see back here, there's 2 bolts, one here and one right here. Okay, where my finger is. Those are E18. So you're going to take your E18 socket, looks like that, and you're just going to, just like a regular thing, loosen those bolts up. Okay, so once you have this piece off of the car, just go ahead and set that to the side. Keep track of those bolts. The last piece we need to remove before we can take off the rotor is this little set screw that's right here. That's going to take the same size as the other one in the front, a 5mm Allen key. Just go ahead. I already loosened this one up. Just go ahead and remove that. All right, y'all, so we're taking a rubber mallet and banging the rotor loose. You don't want to try not to use this. Even though we're getting rid of this rotor, you don't want to hit this too hard because there's a lot of force that goes with a solid metal forged mallet, and you don't want to ruin the wheel bearing. In fact, I think I need to replace this wheel bearing as well. I'm getting a little movement in the rear. It's completely besides the point, but I don't think it's suspension related. I think this wheel bearing's going out. But anyway, we want to be gentle with it, but get the rotor off. So use a rubber mallet and tap around the edges. And as you can see, the rotor quickly broke loose, and now we can take it off. Okay, folks, so to compress the rear brake caliper, what you're going to do is you're going to need this this push style brake caliper compression tool. I actually brought the screw type tool. That's incorrect. Luckily the shop here had this style tool, so make sure you buy this, because if you try to use the C-clamp method, my C-clamp is not big enough to fit around the parking brake solenoid module on the back, so the C-clamp wouldn't work. And this is not a screw type to compress, it's a push type. So get you one of these, or you're going to have to figure something else out. You might need to use the dual piston, multi-piston caliper spreader, worst case. I think that's what I did last time. But anyway, so you just go ahead and you squeeze this until it is completely compressed. And as you can see, there it is. It stopped compressing. And now the caliper piston is completely compressed, and we can refit the brake pads and put everything back together. All right, y'all, quick tip. There is a little spring, a retainer spring. It's really an anti-rattle spring that's included in most likely in your old brake pads. You're going to want to swap that into the new brake pad. So all you'll need to do is just simply remove this spring. It's not hard at all to remove that. And then you'll need to install it onto the new one, like so. Okay, so now that spring is in there. All right, make sure you do that. Okay, y'all, so for the mounting process, pretty straightforward. Make sure you have the correct rotor. It says rear and right side, so the rotation is going this way. So you're going to mount the rotor like so. Make sure that each hole has a lug nut, a hole that it lines up with. And then you're going to go ahead and take your retaining pin here and screw that in the same way that we did in the beginning. I want to keep that rotor nice and lined up there so that I can go in. trying to keep my dirty gloves off of the nice finish here, but honestly, all this is going to be covered by the wheel anyway. So, yep, you're going to tighten that up. And that doesn't need a crazy amount of force. This is just to hold the brake rotor in place. As you can see, that is now mounted on the car. What you'll do then is you're going to take the caliper, the first half of the caliper carrier, and you are going to take your caliper bolts and you're going to put them back where you found them. There we go. All right. And you're going to take your E18 socket and you're going to tighten them up. Once we have the caliper holder back on, the brake pads for the rears are pretty easy. You just slide them into place pretty much. Okay, where's my other one? There we go. Just to give you an example, look at how worn down, look at how worn these are. Okay, it's a full brake pad. Once again, good thing is these are worn down pretty much perfectly evenly, so we know that the caliper is back there, you know, doing its job. So, all right, just go ahead and hang these up properly. And then we can go ahead and mount our caliper. All right. Make sure you thread the brake wear sensor through the back of the caliper. And now it's on. That's when you take your slide pins and apply some heavy-duty industrial grease lubricant to the shiny outside piece. That's anti-seize. I'll put some lubricant right here, and then you slide them into the back. Tighten those down. Once you do that, you can reinstall your retaining pin. It's pretty easy to do, same way you popped it out. And one last thing, in order for me to push the brake piston in, I had to remove the Alfa Romeo cover here. That's just held on by 2 screws. You guys can figure that one out. All right, so once you get the screws back here in, don't tighten them all the way through yet. You still want this caliper to be able to flex some so you can get the spring back on here properly. So what you're going to do with the spring is you're just going to simply install one side, install the other side in the other hole, and if you can, with hand force, you're just going to pull or push until it's on. And now the spring is seated. If you can't get that with your hand, just use a screwdriver to put it on there like I did when I removed it. And the last piece is going to be our caliper cover here. Then we can you can finish by torquing the slide pin bolts in fully, and remembering to replace the cap, the seal for the end cap there. Once you're done with that, remember to replace the parking brake sensor here. That's as simple as pushing it in and clipping the little gray pin in. And then we're completely done with the rear. Okay, y'all, so this is what the final product should look like. The brake sensor wire reconnected, parking brake wire reconnected, slide pin bolts in, retaining spring in, cover on, and we've got our new lightweight 2-piece rotor in the rear. We've got the retaining pin in, and 5 lug nut bolt holes ready for the spacer and then the wheel to go on. But remember, we're not putting anything on it yet because we still have to bleed the car. So let me go ahead and do the other side of the car, and I'll see you when it's time to bleed the brakes. All right, y'all, we now have all 4 brake rotors installed on the vehicle. Okay, and it is time to go ahead and bleed the brakes. So as you can see, all 4 are on there. So to bleed the brakes, I'll be using this Motive Power Bleeder. All right, this thing is tried and true, tested. This helps if you don't have a buddy to sit in the car and press the brake pedal. I think the instructions on this thing tell you to pump it up to like 20 or so PSI. I might have pumped it a little too high, but all you do is you put your brake fluid in this reservoir, you pump it up until it's at like 20 PSI, and the brake fluid goes through here, and you know, this is our brake cap, and that's the brake fluid. So there's brake fluid being constantly fed into the reservoir, and I'm just gonna set that up there so that it's not going across here. There's some air in the line that's gonna come out, air that was trapped in the brake reservoir. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna bleed the brakes, and as you may or may not know, when you bleed the brakes, you start with the farthest away from the brake master cylinder to the closest. So you're going to start here, you're going to bleed this brake, you're going to bleed it until you don't see any more bubbles coming out of the brake caliper, until it's just a steady stream of brake fluid. Once you're done with that, you're going to shut it off tight, and you're going to move to the driver's side rear. So passenger side rear, driver's side rear, and then you're going to go to the passenger side. Now, since these have 2 bleeder screws, because this is a multi-piston caliper, you are going to bleed the outside first, then the inside. Remember, because we're going from furthest away from the brake master cylinder to closest, so you're going to bleed this one first, and then the inside. And then you're going to come over here to the driver's side caliper, and you're going to bleed outside and then inside, and then you'll be done. So if you do it in that order, you'll be good to go. Okay, y'all, so we now have the car pretty much set back down on the ground. I still got to go around and torque the wheels, but I reconnected the battery, so we're going to go ahead and turn her on. Okay, so we should have a Christmas tree of lights here on the dash. Yep, as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff going on. All right, it says park brake retracted to reset, press brake pedal and activate brake park switch. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the brake pedal and I'm going to activate the brake park switch. Vehicle must not be in motion. It says brake service, park brake reset, brake service complete. So then I click OK, and then that's done. All right, so the next thing we got to do is we got to fire up the car and do the reset, and I'll show you 2 methods to do that. I use multi-ECU scan on my iPhone with this Bluetooth, wireless Bluetooth dongle right here that I did a video about a long time ago. This thing is worth its weight in gold. So you can use that. You can use the wired MES multi-ECU scan with the laptop, or you can do this method that I'm about to show you. But real quick, let me just go ahead and torque down the wheels while the car's on the ground so I don't have to worry about that later. I'll be right back. Okay, y'all, so what you're going to want to do is move the wheel all the way to the left. Hold it. All the way to the right. Hold it. All the way to the left again. Hold it. And come back center. Alright. As you can see, some things already went away. And then you want to turn it off and on like 10 times. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then try to turn the car on. All the codes should be clear, and they are. This tire pressure light, that's just from the fact that I still don't have tire pressure sensors in my aftermarket wheels. I've just been lazy, but as you can see, there's no more codes on the dash. And yeah, I know that I said turn it all the way to the left. I meant turn all the way to the right, then left, then right again, then center, and then you turn it off and on like 8 times and it clears all the codes. Okay folks, so all the codes are now reset. The car is good to go. There's really nothing else you need to do. Remember to put the brake reservoir cap back on before you back on tightly before you close your hood. But yep, car's good to go. No codes. I made sure the parking brake was functional like normal once again, and she's good. She now has the Club Alfa lightweight 2-piece rotors on, and man, do they look amazing. So stay tuned for part 2, which will be the review of these. That'll happen in a couple days this weekend. Yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for watching, y'all. I hope this helped you. Hey, just so you know, any of you can use this review, even if you have OEM brakes. If you're not installing Club Alfa brakes, this review goes for doing the brakes on a Giulia or a Stelvio. So hopefully this is helpful. And all right, see you in the next video, part 2, the review of the Club Alfa 2-piece brake rotors.